So, good afternoon to everyone from Europe, from Central Asia and other regions. Thank you very much for joining us. Um, on behalf of the European Association of Central Asian Studies, I want to welcome you to this seminar on the Life in Kyrgyzstan study, which is not only a database, which is not only just a panel survey, it's a longitudinal multi-topic survey, which is conducted in Kyrgyzstan since 2010 with different waves, which is a unique research infrastructure, also which is open and dynamic, with organizing events and which cooperate with local institutions and which is also incorporating different research projects led by the individuals and getting in touch with local institutions and universities. So this is a very impressive research project. I'd like to I wanted to give the chance to all of you, to our audience, to the ESCAS members, but also to the principal investigators of this research project, the chance to put in common the ideas, maybe to give a chance for further collaboration among us. So this presentation is structured in different topics: the survey, design and methodology, also the singularity and the possibility to be replicable in other Central Asian countries, the data access, and also not only for the researchers we currently are working in the Life in Kyrgyzstan study, but also the chances for data access and availability, for other researchers, in particular researchers with concerns on Central Asia study. Also, we would like to receive the input from Tilman Brück and Damir Esenaliev about the research agenda of the Life in Kyrgyzstan research members and which are the main events ahead. I know that there is an annual conference of the Life in Kyrgyzstan study, which is normally in Bishkek, and the next one is in October, and nowadays the call for papers is still open. So now let me introduce our speakers. I'm very fortunate, and you are also all the audience is very fortunate to have with us Professor Tilman Brück and Damir Esenaliev. Professor Tilman Brück is the principal investigator of the Life in Kyrgyzstan project, but he is also the founder and director of the International Security and Development Center and co-founder and co-director of the Household in Conflict Network. He has a very long and rich experience in researching development economics, food security, household behaviors, conflict fragility, and measurement of violence and insecurity in micro-level surveys. Also with us, Dr. Damir Esenaliev, who is the co-principal investigator of the Life in Kyrgyzstan study. He's a development economist with a strong and extensive expertise in quantitative microeconomic research, impact evaluation, household and panel survey methodology. And his topics of research are agricultural, rural development, labor market, food security, social cohesion, inequality, and intergenerational mobility. This seminar is structured first by introduction, presentation by the speakers of 30-35 minutes, and then we will open a Q&A period for all the audience, so you can submit your questions in the chat, and I will bring as many as possible of them into the discussion. Of course, I have prepared some questions on my side too, so I hope we have time to discuss after the presentation by Damir Esenaliev and Tilman Brück. Thank you very much for joining us. So I pass the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. As with the LiK study, this talk is also collaborative. So Damir and I are going to share it, and we're going to go back and forth in the presentation. So just now I will start, and Damir will take over, and then I come back. So thank you for joining, and thank you for inviting us to giving this talk. We're happy to talk about our experiences, and we really look forward to maybe members of your association to use the data and or to get involved in the study. It's a very collaborative project. We'd be happy to hear if people want to write to us later. Next slide, please. So the Life in Kyrgyzstan, or LiK study, in a nutshell, is the longest running panel study in Central Asia. I think it's also the longest running panel study anywhere in the former Soviet Union outside of Russia. So it's a fantastic resource to study how people cope with change and with transition in the very long period. What's unique about, or what's important about it, is that it's multi-topic. It's not a singular disciplinary domain, neither from the academic nor from a policy point of view. As we will see later, we cover many different topics. It's an individual panel study, so we track individuals longitudinally since 2010 in multiple surveys. These 88,000 plus individuals live in about 3,000 households all across Kyrgyzstan. If they move within Kyrgyzstan, we track them. They can only escape us by moving abroad or, sadly, by passing away. In addition, we have data at the community level and at the household level. And nowadays, we interview all adult members of the household and youth as well, above a certain age, which means that the survey and the study are particularly well suited to studying intra-household issues around gender, bargaining, decision-making, etc. We have a broad range of topics, which is loosely based on the Living Standard Measurement Survey system of the World Bank. So demographics, assets, expenditure, migration, etc. You see the list there, welfare, etc. So there's quite a lot of different topics. There are surveys out there which capture each of these topics in more detail, but none of them capture all of these topics. And so if you want to connect, political attitudes with gender behavior, we are the place to go. Or if you want to connect, social networks with climate shocks, we are the place to go to. Yeah, and this combination of topics, I think, is our unique strength. When we first started in 2010, we had more funding. We had a grant from the Volkswagen Foundation, which set us up, and we were able to collect 4 annual waves in 4 years. Since then, we have been fundraising separately for each wave. It's really a bit of a volunteer project. We give our love and our time quite freely, but we need to cover the cost of the data collection. If you know of a source, let us know. We're happy to collaborate, which means we have been able to collect in 2016, 19, and then post-pandemic 2025, just last year. We make past data available freely online. We come to that later, and many people use our data. I mean, I would say the majority of papers are actually written by people who weren't part of collecting it. I almost feel like sometimes all the work in making the survey possible crowds out the time we have to analyze it ourselves. But I guess that's the fate of anybody who starts a panel study. Next slide, please. So this gives you an overview over the different waves across the different years. Each time it was a consortium of institutions that has been involved in there, often a relatively heavy German involvement, given the funding originally came from Germany, but later also international partners and international organizations, and critically always a national partner. Initially, the American University of Central Asia, and then since Wave 4, it has been the University of Central Asia, which has been our constant partner, in addition to other partners who have been supportive from the side, but who maybe weren't part of the formal consortium. We've had different survey companies helping us with the data collection, and then some modules we rotate over the years, so we don't always ask everything, and we note down there some topics that we have shown in different years. So that way you can sometimes come back and compare 2 waves for a specific topic. Next slide, please. So now I hand over to Damir to talk about the methodology and data access.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Thank you. Very grateful for Ruben for inviting us to present what we do and we love. and I will continue what Tilman started with some more details about methodology and data access. Probably the second aspect is most what interests people. Here we are. Okay, just a moment. Okay. So it's a panel study, meaning we go to the same households and individuals all the time. So we don't add others who are not part of the study, right? So anyone who was with us in 2010 are our panel sample, which means we track individuals, not households. As Tilman already explained, if a respondent moves within a country, we follow and service that person, but also add household members of this new household. Persons who join to existing household also surveyed and tracked. Example could be babies born to this household, or for example, a son got married and that person also part of the sample. I guess that's quite clear. It is quite typical setup. For example, UK's Understanding Society panel study does exactly the same. Now, again, as Tilman said, we present all regions of the country. Not all districts or rayons are part of it, but largely the population of the sample is proportional to population of the oblast at that time. And most households come from the rural areas. As I already mentioned, this sample is based on 2009 population census. And they are not representative at oblast level, but at regional, rural, urban, north-south, and national levels. Right, so this table should give you a feeling how the sample dynamics evolved over time. For example, household numbers, quite important for us, has been declining. So attrition, reduction of households in a sample is something very pertinent to panel studies. People move out, people refuse to participate, people also, as Tilman said, sadly pass away. So these are reasons why the panel sample reduces, but also, as you also saw from the panel kind of following rule, it also has cooperated to also increase its sample size. But as you see, by 2025, it's about 75% of initial sample what remained. But in terms of individuals, it's more or less stable. You see also that we have agriculture and use module appearing later in this table, but that's something I will comment in the following slide. This again to show you how household sampling was changing over time. As I said, some parts of the country gained some more households, while some parts lost quite a lot, mostly urban areas, Bishkek and Osh City, for example, but Batken, for example, gained a bit more. So it gives you a sense of how it's not say trivial to collect panel data, because it also reflects how demographic shifts also evolves in the country. And I should probably add that this attrition is also in line with other studies in developing world, maybe a bit higher, but in general, we are in line with what happens in reality in other countries as well. The questionnaires, we have many of them. As soon as it's clear we are collecting a new wave, there is a team or consortium of several organizations with own thematic interests, and that's how we do this period of collecting ideas and making sure that we address those research questions. We have a focus on this particular wave. We collected data on paper in our first years, wave 1 and 5. But then time demanding, we move to planchette-based or copy method of data collection, which also gives us a bit more flexibility to processing data later. Data collected in Kyrgyz and Russian, increasingly in Kyrgyz. As Tilman said, we collect some modules all the time. We call them core modules. There are special modules which are not necessarily to be collected every wave, but of high interest. For example, we have the so-called toy module, toy meaning not a toy for a playing, but rather toy reflecting Kyrgyz festivities when people go and socialize, and they do it very often. As I said, in 2016, we had agricultural module separated, and it has a very detailed farming data on plot level, within a plot, how many crops, for example, are planted. 2019, youth questionnaire was introduced for ages 14 and 17, and again, we have really unique data when we know information at individual level from all members of a household. So it's really interesting to see how the responses are different on the same type of question. And that's where we feel this data is not exploited enough on that intra-household relations part. This is a glimpse of topics we collect, and it's not really reflecting the depth of each of them. Some could be having subsections. For example, in housing and assets, we ask about housing, we ask about livestock, we ask about furniture they have, appliances, all the things that surrounds people's lives. In, for example, individual level questionnaire, in social life, we ask things like trust and social networks, if they participate in community life, how they feel about being safe, for example. So if you look at the questionnaires, it's quite detailed in many aspects, and agricultural questionnaire as well, for example, has many sections. So this is probably you had a look and found your topic of interest, but that's one example of particular wave when we collected this information. Now, to give you a sense of what data are showing about some trends, some indicators, life satisfaction is probably one of the first questions we ask because that's how usual conversation starts. How's life? And life seems to be on positive trajectory. For example, in last wave, we have quite many people saying their life is quite good. So out of 0 to 10, 7.5. More people saying, giving highest ranking 8 to 9. So it's interesting to see and think what drives this change. Yeah, something we probably don't yet have a good answer. Another example would be feeling safe. Also shows positive trend, but some decline in the last wave. It's a question to what extent you feel safe walking alone at night. So you clearly see female feel less safe. And another note to make for this particular slide that this question is part of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals indicator, and it's one of the aspects of LiK that it also can serve as an alternative data source for tracing SDG indicators. Next would be about trust, to general trust, trust to institutional, interpersonal trust. Largely things look stable with some ups and downs in some ways, but that's something we collect all the time. It's one of the core modules, for example. Now it's a question we asked from the 2011 wave about political system people would like to live in, or what's the most suitable for the country. And we asked several options. two of them presented here are like Kyrgyz system as it is now, Russian system as it is now, and Soviet Union style was one of the options. And Kyrgyz system was least popular, and we see in 2025 it gained in popularity, being around 10%. First, people saying yes, I like it, till every second person. So it's probably reflects developments in the country. Politically, it's definitely a different country in recent years. So, and as you see, Russian system lost its popularity. But also why I'm showing this don't know option is to say that there is still sizable amount of people who still not sure what system would be good for the society. Climate change, another example, we see more people know about it and think it's important. To what extent their lives are affected is one of the subjects we are researching already. And as you see from these numbers, LiK gives answers to many quite important questions. Now moving to back how we do practically data collection. Used to be we collected data always in autumn. After harvest is collected, especially in rural areas, people would be quite happy to give responses. With the exception of the last wave when we collected data in spring due to funding calendar. As we said, survey companies were two of them, Sotsakonic and CR, quite well-known companies in the country. Team structure, they usually hire around 100 enumerators. They work in teams, teams enough to fit into a car and go to a village and work the whole day in data collection. Field work is usually about 3 months. Equally, how long it takes? The question, given the breadth of topics you already saw, it takes quite a lot of time. For household, it's about 1 hour, a bit less. For agriculture, it could go, if they really do a lot of things, several plants, several land plots, many livestock varieties, then they have to respond almost 2 hours. And the rest is a bit lighter, I would say. Since when data is collected, we get the raw data, and there is equal amount of time for data cleaning. It's exactly where we do correction and error detection. We handle missing values and all sorts of data checking to make sure that data is quality to extent it's possible. And after some time, usually it's 1 year after data cleaning that we release it for public use. Currently, till now, the data were posted at the ISDC data platform. ISDC was, as you may noticed, donor at some point. And we are moving now data depository to Kyrgyz. It's also German-based platform, probably larger in terms of data sources it keeps now, and we are moving to them, and we will let you know. If you're using data and want to make sure we see who is using the data, please cite the study from 2014. We call it survey paper. That helps us to see who is using the data and what publications are coming out. This is probably lower bound estimate how many users and institutions and countries use, but that's what we know. It includes international academic, all the well-known institutions, Central Asian universities, and development institutions alike. So we are quite happy that Central Asian academic community dominates in terms of using the data. We see that, for example, many doctoral students from Uzbekistan use LiK data to write their thesis and papers. And that's what Tilman said. It's not only for the country, but also global and regional data source and infrastructure. I guess with that, I give floor back to Tilman to say about academic impact.
Yeah, it just struck me. Thank you, Damir, when you talked about Uzbek students using LiK data on Kyrgyzstan, of course. I think Kyrgyzstan with the LiK is a bit of a market leader. If you are ever involved in starting a panel study in Central Asia, let us know. We're happy to advise and help. And I think there's some lessons learned which we'd be happy to share. So just briefly, next slide, please. Let's look at what has been done. A lot has been done, and there are some papers out there where I go, wow, that's so cool. I wish I had been a co-author of that paper. But if you use our data, you don't need to make us co-author. Of course, you can collaborate with us. But there's some top journals in multiple disciplines which have used this, and we want to give you some examples in a moment of what has been done. Next slide, please. The themes, as you have now seen, are very much multi-topic, but also different domains of life. Yeah, it's really trying to track how people live and what their livelihoods are. Labor markets, employment and wages, but also migration remittances, which of course is a huge topic in Kyrgyzstan. And there the longitudinal really helps because we see people leave and come back, for example. But marriage, family and social norms, in fact, I like to say that it's almost like a birth cohort study because we track every kid that's born. We know its birth weight. So very interesting work has been done with that, showing, for example, that children of mothers who were married by kidnapping, bride kidnapping, as opposed to as a result of love marriages, those children have a lower birth weight. And so we track those kids, we measure them as they grow up, their weight, their height. We come to an example of research using that. Then later when they're youth, we ask them, and the first kids that were born into the LiK study now reach adulthood and are transitioning into the labor market. So, in that sense, it's similar to the Young Life study based in Oxford in the UK. We also look at social capital, well-being, economic behavior and welfare, and then education, human capital, food security, and actually additional topics over and above that. Every year, there are journal articles published using LiK data and other publications, whether it's working papers, policy briefs, student theses, so there's quite an active user community out there. Next slide, please. And I want to give you two examples of papers. One is a paper that I have done together with my two colleagues, Hanna Freudenreich and Anastasia Aledisheva, on weather shocks, where we look at different types of weather shocks and how they impact child health, because we take these child anthropometrics. Maybe the mixed study does it in even more detail, but I think our data on average is actually quite good. And maybe if you go to, and this was published in World Development, if you go to the next slide, please. Here you can see one of the core outcomes. We looked at drought shocks, excessive rainfall shocks, and my favorite in the Kyrgyz context, cold shocks, because if you have too cold a winter and too long a winter, it changes the livelihoods of the households, but it also changes how you can stay warm and how you manage the energy situation. And in results not shown on the slide, how you heat your house has a huge impact on your health and your lungs and your breathing and so on. Yeah. And here we see that the very young kids aged 0 to 19 months are adversely affected by these different shocks. And in later ages, that's not significant anymore. Boys seem to be a little strongly affected than girls. And it's the cold shocks in particular that really impact on their height and their stunting. Yeah, so it increases their stunting probability. That's why it's a positive coefficient. Yeah, and that's not good news, as we know stunting is a lifelong problem that you can't really fully overcome. Next, please. Here's a fantastic paper by Damir where he looks at the welfare effects of smallholder export participation. So, small farmers, they sell their stuff. Does it matter who they sell to? Does it matter if they sell locally or nationally, or whether the products get sold internationally or exported thereafter? And he looks at different outcomes, and you can see how in the different waves, the export households, especially in later years, seem to have a higher agricultural income. You can see that on the bottom left there. And maybe seemingly also have a slightly higher household income, which is maybe not entirely surprising. But when you look at household consumption, which is probably the best welfare proxy, it doesn't really make a significant difference. Yeah, so it doesn't really seem to matter how you sell your stuff, your agricultural output, and that probably has to do with weak value chains and lack of institutions supporting, the increased potential that you could realize from exporting. Yeah, you should earn more with exporting, but you don't. Yeah, because the institutions are too weak. That's my interpretation of Damir's results. He's free to contradict me in the Q&A. Yeah, published in the Journal of Development Studies recently. So also a very nice result using our earlier data. Yeah, fantastic paper in my view. Next slide, please. We try to collect the data. We try to also create a sort of user community around that. Ruben has already said we have an annual conference in Bishkek, always in October. The call for papers for this year's conference is currently open, so maybe we can put it in the chat. You're very welcome to submit a paper. It doesn't have to be with LiK. It doesn't have to be in Kyrgyzstan, but probably it should be on Central Asia, you know, of a topic of relevance there. And it should be empirical and should be sort of evidence-based. And, you know, over the years, we've seen a fantastic range of presentations, you know, on gender and lots of other things, and just really giving a lot of evidence to topics where, when I first came to Kyrgyzstan, it was like people said, oh, one should also, you know, it was very normative, and now it's becoming more empirical. And I think that's a huge breakthrough. There are, of course, other data sources as well in Kyrgyzstan, but they don't share the same feature. So there's usually a diversity, and people discuss, you know, which data source is good for what. And, you know, it's very empirical. It's really cool. Yeah. It's usually bilingual, so English and Russian. So, you know, and usually practitioners also join. You know, we've had deputy ministers and so on come and give talks and then be challenged by researchers on what they said. And I've heard, you know, audience participants say, wow, it's fantastic. You know, it's not something I usually see. Yeah. So we're trying to create a certain sort of evidence spirit. Damir also leads a lot of workshops every year on user engagement, to help students and young researchers and early career researchers use our data. We have the Life in Kyrgyzstan website. We occasionally post something on the social media. And in the past, we've had student competitions, students using the LiK data for bachelor's or master's theses, which is another great way, you know, and generally speaking in teaching, yeah, there's a lot of professors who use our data in teaching. Next slide, please. So that's our website. Feel free to engage with that. Here's the data access. That's the current link, and also in response to one of the comments in the chat, there may be hiccups currently as we're transitioning from one data host to another data host. We like you to register because it shows how our data is being used. Let's try to find out whether this was a one-off IT problem or whether it was representing this transition period. It's a bit awkward for us to give you data access outside of that channel, because then we don't know if you have agreed to all the conditions that they impose on you. It's quite labor intensive. So we kind of like you to get the data from a central data source. Then everybody also has the same data and the same access. But yeah, let's work on individual problems. We're trying to advise and help with that. And here's the link to the conference this year and its call for papers. Next slide, please. So thank you for your interest. We're happy to answer your questions, and these are our email addresses in case you have any questions and like to keep in touch. Thank you from my side, and also on behalf of Damir and the whole LiK team. Thank you.
Thank you, Damir and Tilman, for this very good presentation. Now we have time to discuss. Indeed, you have been very fast, so we have plenty of time to discuss. The chat is open for receiving the submission of questions. Or you can raise your hand too. Please, Asankoyo Isaev.
Hello, thank you so much for your presentation today. I don't know why I'm blurred. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for your presentation. I am Asankojo Isaev. I represent Dublin City University and the consortium Presilient, and we're working on informality. And my sliver of that is informal economy in Kyrgyzstan, and especially toy economy. What Damir mentioned, the toy segment, or the what did you say? Toy part of the survey. I'm really curious about that, and that's why I was asking that I couldn't actually access it. I registered, but then it gave me error. So maybe I should write you an email, and you could explain what's going on with that.
You should be able to access the questionnaire. Right. So that's just the first thought. Yeah, that might tell you what the data, you know, what we asked and what variables are available. Right. So maybe that's one way how we can proceed, and then we can also check with the data providers, whether they're currently active or not. So this is a one-off special thing that, IZA as an institution is transitioning, like they're shutting down and they're moving over to Luxembourg, and I don't know if they're taking all core functions across. So they have been doing this as a voluntary service to the community for us. We had some funding from them in the past, and so they were happy to host us, and they've done a fantastic job. We're very grateful for their help. But so I don't know if this is what the nature of this is. We're happy to look at that with you. Yeah, but I'm sure we can get you data access soon. Yeah, it sounds like a fantastic project, and informality, I think, is a super cool research topic, and so maybe looking at it from a panel point of view is helpful. Yeah.
Right. And I also wanted to ask you whether online participation will be possible in the LiK conference this October.
We usually have some online participation. I'm not sure we have it for all sessions always, but normally we do. But of course, it's best to be on site and engage and chat in the break and so get to know people. Yeah, but I understand not everybody can come. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Equally so.
Please, Aipiri.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. My name is Aipiri. I'm a researcher from our state university. It is located in the south of Kyrgyzstan, but currently I'm doing the PhD studies at the Institute of Science Tokyo. I already registered for data and have been using it for doing some kind of small analysis here and there. My main interest is in the air pollution effect on health. I found some questions indirectly assessing that aspect via the use of fuel for heating in your data set. I would be really grateful if you could lead me or direct me to some other questions that could help me to research this more. Also, I have a question on whether the data collection from 2025 will be published in the data sets. Currently, I think the latest wave there is from 2022, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, maybe in reverse order, and maybe Damir wants to jump in as well. We always make all data available after an initial period of about a year, because we still doing quite a heavy cleaning. It's quite a lot of work. Yeah, so we're not even finished now. Yeah, we're still checking some things. So we feel if we release the data too early and then keep updating it, might be confusing. So it's more, we're not a policy-driven project, yeah, where we want really quickly the latest numbers. So given that we have a new wave every couple of years, we want to do a proper job, and then we use it for what, we usually get funding in order to do some studies. Like there's no donor that's just willing to fund the public good as such. Yeah, that's almost the definition of a public good. And so we allow the donors to absorb our analysis, and then this autumn we expect to make the next wave of the data available. Yeah, so soon you should be able to have the next wave. But what I would recommend to anybody who starts new with the survey, start running your analyses on the existing 6 waves, and then adding the 7th is not a big step. Yeah, once your script runs, then you can expand the analysis. Yeah, I think if you download all the questionnaires, you should be able to automatically find relatively quickly what interests you. We also have overview tables over which modules are in which years, so you can get a sense of what has been asked in more detail, and that might also be a good way to narrow it down. Yeah, so maybe that helps you. And I know the EBRD, I think, has looked a lot at air pollution in the past, so maybe just as a additional thought, maybe check what they have done, but I don't think they've analyzed our data for that. So, but I know it's an important topic, and again, in my child stunting thing, we find like indoor air pollution is actually a huge issue as well, not just outdoor. Yeah, so maybe that's another content point. Maybe Damir wants to complement what I've said.
Yeah, on air pollution, given Tilman showed this table with thematic focus for 2025, we collected more data on that particular part. And yeah, meaning what's your assessment regarding air pollution given issues in wintertime, especially in big cities? And that's available in more detail in our data, but in 2025. I don't think we asked anything specific in previous waves beyond climate change module where we asked in general. So that's kind of a bit of news for you. I think 2025 questionnaire is already on the website. You can have a look. It's in household part.
Thank you very much. And just a second small question as a follow-up on this. It's kind of yeah, you've been doing a great job in the country and Central Asian context as well. But unfortunately, the researchers from my university, in State University, are kind of unaware, maybe. Not many people know about it, unfortunately. And I've been trying to distribute the data set since I get access to it. And is it okay if the other PhD students from the faculty will be doing the studies for the research questions? And is it possible to engage them more with the data collection, probably for the educational purposes to increase their capacity as researchers? So is there any ways for the collaboration? Thank you.
We're very happy to collaborate, and we're happy to continue this discussion after this webinar. It's best if every user registers for data access, because then we can show to future donors, look, this many users have used it, and also, these are quite detailed and personal data. I mean, of course, anonymized, etc. But it's good if everybody makes an explicit agreement. So we asked that everybody who wants to use the data individually registers. I think that's preferable to one person registering and then sharing the data. That's not usually foreseen in the agreement, but normally that's not a problem, practically and technically. We're also very happy to, maybe have a meeting, discuss. The data collection, we usually have a competitive tender with survey firms who then organize the enumerators themselves. So that's not part of our capacity building project to then involve students. I think there's pros and cons. I could see the benefit for the students, but from a survey point of view, it's good to have professional enumerators who are extremely trained. And I would say that if you want the students to learn data collection, it's probably better to do a small sample survey where you try something, but not so I think for consistency's sake, it's probably better to use the survey companies' collaborators. What has happened in the past is that we say, okay, there's a need for a topic, and that we have jointly with partners raised funds to do another collection of a wave, and then we were able to promise the donor we will include a few questions on your particular topic, but we ask, of course, all the core questions from every wave. So if you knew of a donor that wanted to help fund LiK 8 with a focus on their, say, education focus, then that would be possible. So
just maybe highlight as well why we want all users to be registered. We do fundraising, and we want to show that the impact of the study is expanding. So that's the only way we can say this is the number of users. So if someone gets the data and distributes to 20, so we are missing those 20 people, right? So by registering, you're helping us to continue the study in very maybe small way, but that would be really appreciated if it's done through that data depository institution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Olga, I'm not sure if you were trying before to raise a question. Olga?
If yes, no, I'm sorry, it was an accident. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
There's a question in the chat.
Then we have a question from Elmira Kaumenova, who thanks the speakers for the presentation. Do you use incentives for the respondents? It is possible to read about the methodology in this sense, I guess.
Damir, do you want to?
Yeah, maybe I start with incentives. We have to give incentives for them to stay in the study. So last wave, it's a monetary compensation for their time, more or less reflecting market price for that hour or two. So it's close to €2 per questionnaire. It's not, doesn't sound too large, but from perspective of a household, large household, if everyone responds and they have also agricultural part and etc., it's quite a kind of sensible amount of compensation. The methodology, I think the link I posted above also has some study reports. If you go through the bottom part of the page and look at the list of materials, you should see some very specific report showing where we collect data, what specific features it has. But the whole website is also about a lot methodology, meaning it's not very complicated as we explained. So main materials would be questionnaires and what are the rules, how we approach our sample of households or individuals every time. So we start from the last one and then see who left and who joined these households, and most important, how we trace people who moved from one place to another within the country and how we organize that tracing. That's I would respond for this particular question.
Tilmur, Damir, I would like to ask you, or just if you can tell us if there are new chances for early Central Asian scholars to be recruited, but by some of the project, I mean by scholars, not just people working on the survey. Are the Life in Kyrgyzstan study and the projects led by the team members of the Life in Kyrgyzstan studies trying to recruit and launching calls for positions open for Central Asian scholars regularly?
Sorry, whether there are positions in the research teams or
yes.
So as I said, we fund the survey through grants, and sometimes the grant only funds the survey, but not the research on the survey, or not much of the research. So the economic fortunes of the LiK study fluctuate over the years. It's currently particularly difficult to fund something like this. Then we always advertise, but I would put it the other way around. If, for example, somebody from the region wanted to do a PhD using LiK data, either with anybody else, very welcome, or with our team in Berlin, then please get in touch. And sometimes there are scholarships. The data is available free. So what needs funding is the livelihood, the scholarship. In Germany, registering at university is basically free, so that's not the tuition fees are not the issue either. So there are various scholarship schemes available for Central Asian PhD students who want to spend time abroad and get a PhD abroad. So that's something personally I'd be very happy to hear from a student who wants to go to PhD studies using LiK. That would be fantastic. Damir and I would be delighted to hear from you. But currently, we don't have any jobs coming up anytime soon, unfortunately. But we keep trying to raise more funding also for the research. And if that changes, then we'll post it on the social media channels of our research institutions, where we're affiliated.
Thank you. Mehmet?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I am a historian. I'm not very much familiar with this type of research, so I have a general question. Are there any specific ethical considerations for such a long-term study? I mean, different from one-time surveys and different from, let's say, oral history interviews?
That's an interesting question. First one that gets me to stutter a little bit. Survey research has a whole range of ethical issues. It's all around anonymizing. I mean, just to be very explicit, we know where people live. We conduct the interviews in their house. We record that, but that we don't share, because if I told you that somebody is a livestock trader with 3 children and 56 years old, living in a certain village, you know who he is. Yeah, so there's and of course the names we take out, but the locations we also have to take out. Yeah, because otherwise it's just not, and that causes problems for research sometimes, because if you want to match with other, data, remote sensing data, weather data, political science data, whatever, then institutional data, you'd love to know the location. So we can have workarounds there, we can fuzz the location, etc. But that's maybe the biggest thing. And we do ask what people's political attitudes are. In the past, we found it quite easy getting, authorities to let us conduct the survey. I even hesitate to say, give us authorization, because we didn't really seek authorization. We more like informed them we were doing this, and they were fine. In the last wave, that for the first time was more difficult. Yeah, so the politics of it and the institutional space in which this research can be done is shrinking in Kyrgyzstan, I would say. Yeah, while perhaps ironically it's opening up in a little bit tentatively in places like Uzbekistan. Yeah, so but that's mostly less a concern for the respondents, in my view, although it's hard to know, and we're even trying to do methodological research on that. Are they answering honestly? Do they? Yeah, but it's almost more a problem for the enumerators, yeah, and especially in rural areas, yeah, and so and that's another ethical dimension which is very important, yeah. But yeah, so I would say it's still possible to do good quality social science research in an ethical way in Kyrgyzstan. But I note that the space has been getting a bit smaller. The longitudinal aspect of your question, I'm not sure, once we de-identify people and households, I'm not sure that, there's necessarily I don't think we're holding people back. I don't think anybody says I can't move abroad because I'm part of the study or anything. So I'm not sure there is a longitudinal dimension in itself. Yeah, if in every wave we are careful with the ethics, then I think we're good enough. That's my take. But yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to add, Mehmet, that in fact one of the papers, probably one of the highest kind of impactful papers, looks at history. So it's one of the ways we ask every household which tribe they belong to. And then our colleagues use that information to match that tribe level information with Tari's time 1911 archival data. There was a census of kind of livestock ownership at tribe level, and they matched that information with current group level, more or less wealth. And what they find that this inequality between tribes remained even after so many years of socialism of Soviet Union. And that was one of the very interesting applications, how this data can be matched and used in a very insightful way. So just to continue the idea, the thoughts, given so much information now available, matching at certain level would be probably more and more done to do interesting research. For example, this weather data and temperature data, events data. So that's where we know the potential is, but probably ourselves are quite busy to do it quite proactively.
Thank you. I think I heard about that study. Was it Mirlan Bektursunov or someone else? Whose article was it?
No, I can put a link now, but it's by Alisher Aldashov, who is from Kyrgyzstan, but works mostly in Almaty.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, of course. Please hold on.
Yeah. So the question is, you may have said it already, but do you track young adults who moved out from household and like their new family units?
Hi, Olga. That's Olga.
Hi,
Olga,
Tilman.
right?
Yes, yeah, that's Olga.
Yeah, recognize your voice.
I'm at a conference, yeah, so it's like...
Yeah, no problem. Recognize your voice. Nice to see you. Nice to hear you.
Nice to see you.
yes, we track all individuals who are born in, or like you can sort of get contaminated by LiK. Yeah. So if you marry into a family which is being tracked, then we will track the newly married spouse as well. If you leave the house as a young adult, we will continue tracking you. If you stay in the country, that's the one constraint. It's hard to track across Russia or something like that. Yeah. But if you come back, then, we have you in the roster. And if you come back, then you might be temporarily absent. Then we might continue tracking you. Yeah. So
if you, let's say, like a child becomes an adult and he or she starts a new family, is that family in the survey?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I ended the question. It's like, let's say, like a child marries a woman, they start a family. Is it like, are we still in the survey?
Yes. Yeah. That's my point about the contamination. Yeah, you can't escape LiK. Yeah. So the child that was part of LiK as a child, when they become adults and start their own family, they and their family will become. So that's why the sample potentially grows. Of course, on the other hand, you can die while being part of the study. Yeah. So we have entry and exit into the study. Yeah. What we so far haven't done for lack of funding is have top-up samples. We could rebalance the sample as a result of population movement, whatever. Yeah. So with the new census, that would be possible, but that requires A, larger budget, and B, then we would have a top-up sample for which we wouldn't have historic data. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. And nice to see you too.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I think, answers that. There was a question from Fiona on ethics. Yes, each wave, because we do, check everything again. So every wave has a new ethics clearance. Yeah. And just to make sure we, also ethical guidelines can change, etc. Yeah. So we're not using the 2010 ethic approval. Maybe Damir can expand on how we organize the process.
Regarding ethical approval, yeah, it's done every time we collect data. One way would be to collect once at the beginning and say, okay, we are coming again based on your consent from the previous wave, but this is how it works as of now. As we mentioned, we have use under aged 14, 17. For them, first, we definitely ask parents. If they consent, then we ask the young respondent if they happy to participate. And this is where kind of a bit more sensitive part, but that's how we organize and do it. But it's more individual every time.
There is another question from Stalbeck, who is asking about the census to have some supervisors, a PhD supervisor connected to the life in Kyrgyzstan, if he's working with the panels.
Yeah, maybe best discussed offline if it's a very detailed question. But typically my students are based at Humboldt-University in Berlin, so with an external, I don't know how that would work in practice, but why don't you get in touch and we see what your specific ideas are, and always interested in people wanting to work with the data for PhD or otherwise. Yeah, so be very happy to hear from you, Stalbeck.
We have time for a final question.
Did we address all questions in the chat? I hope we did, but we've been negotiating conference participation this year or next. But
there was a question from Fiona, I believe, regarding youth mental health. Just to say that we don't ask those questions we ask from individuals on their mental health, but depends on how do you define youth. If it still includes those 18 plus, I don't know, 25 years, then you have definitely data in LiK. And we ask them every year, so it gives you an interesting perspective how it changes depending on what happened to that particular household and individual.
Okay. So thank you very much, Tilman. Damir has been a very good presentation, and I'm very happy that there are several proposals for collaboration, and which was the main goal of this seminar. So I think, well, it has been very useful, and maybe there will be new proposals for collaborations with you after uploading our recording to our ESCAS YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and now just thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a really great conversation.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruben and Mohammed, for hosting us. Yeah.
Thank you. You are welcome.
And I hope you're sending a paper.